Later that day, Nduka returned to her. "You cannot stay here anymore," he said. Akunne looked at him slowly. "Where will I go?" she asked weakly. "That is not our problem," Okoro replied. "You will soon be married. Your husband will take care of you." Akunne shook her head. "I do not even know this husband." Nduka's voice became sharp. "You do not have a choice." Akunne stepped back. Her body trembled. "You are sending me away from my father's house?" Nduka looked at her without emotion. Yes, that single word broke her completely. In the quiet and beautiful village of Amako, life moved slowly and peacefully. The air was always fresh in the morning, and the sound of birds filled the sky. Farmers woke up early to go to their farms, women swept their compounds, and children ran around laughing and playing. Among all the people in Amako, one man stood out. His name was Obina. Obina was the richest man in the village. He had many lands, big barns filled with yam, palm trees that stretched far, and many workers who helped him. His compound was large and beautiful, with red earth floors, strong buildings, and tall walls. But what made Obina special was not just his wealth. It was his heart. Obina was a kind man. He did not look down on poor people. He believed that wealth was not for pride, but for helping others. If a widow had no food, Obina would send yam and rice to her house. If a child could not go to school, Obina would pay the fees. If a man was sick and had no money, Obina would help him get treatment. Because of this, many people in Amako loved him. They often said, "Obina is not just rich, he is a blessing to this village." Obina lived with his beautiful wife, Ngozi. Ngozi was also kind and gentle. She respected everyone and spoke softly. Many women in the village admired her because she never insulted anyone, no matter how poor they were. Together, Obina and Ngozi had only one child. Her name was Akunne. Akunne was a young lady with a calm face and a peaceful heart. She was very beautiful, but she did not behave proudly. She greeted elders properly, helped her mother in the house, and treated everyone with respect. Obina loved her daughter deeply. Many evenings he would sit outside with her under the moonlight and talk. One evening, as the cool wind blew gently, Obina looked at Akunne and said, "My daughter, one day everything I have will be yours." Akunne smiled softly and said, "Father, I do not need everything. I only want you and mother." Obina laughed gently. "You are a good child. But listen to me. Wealth is not for showing power. It is for helping people. Never forget that." Akunne nodded. "I will not forget, father." Ngozi watched them from a distance and smiled. Her heart was full of peace. But while happiness lived in Obina's house, jealousy was growing in another place. Obina had two brothers. Their names were Nduka and Okoro. They lived in smaller compounds, not far from Obina's. To the outside world, they acted like loving brothers. They visited Obina, ate his food, and smiled with him. But inside their hearts, they were not happy. They were jealous. One afternoon, Nduka sat under a tree with Okoro drinking palm wine. The sun was hot, but their faces were even hotter with anger. Nduka spoke first. "Look at Obina's house. Look at his land. Everything in this village belongs to him." Okoro nodded slowly. "And what do we have? We are his brothers, but we live like small men." Nduka drank his palm wine and slammed the cup down. "It is not fair." Okoro leaned closer and lowered his voice. "Look at him. People respect him more than us. Even elders listen to him first." Nduka's eyes became dark. That must change. Okoro looked at him carefully. What are you thinking? Nduka looked around to make sure nobody was listening. Then he said quietly, if Obina is not there, everything will come to us. Okoro sat silent for a moment. The sound of birds filled the air, but his heart was beating fast. You mean? He asked slowly. Nduka nodded. Yes. Okoro looked down at the ground. At first, fear touched his heart, but slowly, greed pushed that fear away. Okoro said, his daughter is just a woman. She cannot take everything. Nduka smiled. Exactly. From that moment, a dark plan was born. Back in Obina's house, life continued peacefully. One morning, Obina walked through his farm with some workers. The green leaves moved with the wind and the yams were growing well. A poor man approached him slowly. Sir, please, my child is sick. I have no money. Obina did not ask many questions. He simply turned to one of his workers. Give him money. Let him take his child to the hospital. The man fell to his knees. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Obina helped him stand. Do not thank me. Just take care of your child. From a distance, Akunne watched her father. She smiled with pride. Later that day, she told her mother, Mother, father helps everyone. Ngozi nodded. Yes, that is why God continues to bless him. But she did not know that danger was already moving closer. That evening, Nduka and Okoro visited Obina. They greeted him warmly. My brother, Nduka said with a big smile. Obina welcomed them happily. You are welcome. Come and eat with us. They sat together, ate good food and laughed. Ngozi served them with respect. Akunne greeted them properly. Everything looked normal. But behind their smiles, Nduka and Okoro were watching carefully. They studied the compound, they noticed the wealth, they counted what they wanted to take. Later that night, as Obina and his family slept peacefully, Nduka and Okoro walked quietly outside his compound. The moon was bright, the village was silent. Nduka stopped and looked at the house. This will all be ours soon, he whispered. Okoro swallowed hard. Are you sure we can do this? Nduka looked at him firmly. If we do nothing, we will remain poor forever. Okoro looked again at the house. Inside, his brother slept peacefully, not knowing danger was near. Okoro closed his eyes for a moment. Then he opened them. All right, he said quietly. We do it. A cold wind blew through the night. Far away, a dog barked, and in that moment, the peace of Amako began to break. Because unknown to Obina, the people he trusted the most were already planning his end. And the life of Akunne was about to change. Morning came softly in the village of Amako. The sun rose slowly and the birds began to sing. Women swept their compounds and men prepared for the day's work. Everything looked normal. But in the house of Obina, a journey was about to begin. Inside the compound, Ngozi was arranging food in a small basket. She moved carefully, making sure everything was ready. Obina stepped out, tying his wrapper firmly. My wife, are you ready? He asked gently. Yes, my husband. Everything is set. Their daughter, Akunne, stood by the door, watching them. She had a calm face, but something inside her felt uneasy. Father, she said softly, must you travel today? Obina smiled. It is just a short journey. We will attend the meeting and return before night. Akunne lowered her eyes. I do not know why, but I feel strange. Ngozi walked closer and held her hand. Do not worry, my child. Nothing will happen to us. Obina placed his hand on Akunne's head. Be strong. Take care of the house until we return. Akunne nodded slowly, but her heart was not at peace. Outside, a horse carriage waited. The driver sat quietly, holding the reins. Obina and Ngozi stepped into the carriage. Akunne stood at the gate, watching them. As the carriage began to move, she called out, "Turn back safely." Obina raised his hand. "We will." The carriage moved away slowly, then faster, until it disappeared from sight. Akunne stood there for a long time. The wind blew gently, but her heart felt heavy. The road outside Amako was long and quiet. Tall trees stood on both sides, and the bush was thick in some places. The path was known, but not always safe. Inside the carriage, Obina and Ngozi spoke calmly. "The meeting should not take long," Ngozi said. "Yes," Obina replied. "By evening we will be home." Ngozi smiled. "Akunne will be waiting." Obina nodded. "She is a good child. I thank God for her." The carriage continued moving. But deep inside the bush, hidden among the trees, shadows were waiting. Men stood quietly, holding weapons. Their faces were hard, their eyes were cold. They had been sent, and they were waiting for one thing. Back in Amako, the day moved slowly. Akunne tried to keep herself busy. She swept the compound, she helped the workers. She sat down and tried to eat, but she could not. Her mind was far away. She kept looking at the road, hoping to see her parents return. As the sun began to go down, her fear grew stronger. "Why are they not back yet?" she whispered. She walked to the gate again and looked outside. The road was empty. No sound, no movement, only silence. On the road, something terrible had already happened. The carriage had stopped suddenly. The driver had fallen to the ground. Obina stood up quickly. "What is happening?" Before he could understand, the men came out from the bush. They surrounded the carriage. Ngozi gasped. "Who are you people?" The men said nothing. One of them stepped forward. Obina raised his hand. "If this is about money, take it. Do not harm us." But the men were not there for money. Everything happened very fast. The quiet road became a place of fear. The trees stood still. The wind stopped. And before long, there was silence again. A heavy, deep silence. Night came in Amako. The sky became dark. The moon rose slowly. But in Obina's house, there was no peace. Akunne sat outside, unable to sleep. Her eyes were fixed on the road. Her heart beat fast. Something was wrong. She could feel it. Then suddenly, she heard footsteps. Men were coming. She stood up quickly. "Father!" she called. But it was not her father. Two villagers walked into the compound. Their faces were serious. Behind them, more people followed. Akunne felt her body shake. "What is it? Where are my parents?" Nobody answered immediately. The air became heavy. Finally, one old man stepped forward. "My daughter," he said slowly, "be strong." Akunne's eyes filled with tears. "No, no, what happened?" The old man looked down. They were attacked on the road. Akunne stepped back. "No!" They did not survive. The world became silent. Akunne could not hear anything. Her ears rang. Her legs became weak. "No! No! No!" she cried. She fell to the ground. Her voice broke as she screamed, "My father! My mother!" Women rushed to hold her. Men stood quietly, shaking their heads. The news spread quickly across Amako. People left their houses and gathered. Crying filled the air. Later that night, the bodies were brought back. They were covered with cloth. Akunne crawled toward them slowly. Her hands shook as she touched the cloth. "Please, wake up," she whispered, but there was no answer. She pulled the cloth slightly. She saw their faces, still, cold, gone. Akunne let out a loud cry that echoed through the village. The women cried with her. Ngozi had been loved. Obina had been respected. Their deaths shook the whole village. But not everyone was truly grieving. In a quiet corner, Nduka and Okoro stood among the crowd. They wore sad faces. They shook their heads. They even pretended to cry. Nduka spoke loudly. "This is a great loss. My brother is gone." Okoro added, "Who would do such a thing?" People looked at them with sympathy. Nobody suspected them. But inside their hearts, there was no sorrow, only silence, only secrets, only guilt. When nobody was watching, Nduka looked at Okoro. Their eyes met. No words were spoken, but both of them knew the plan had worked. Days passed, but the pain did not leave. Akunne refused to eat. She sat quietly, staring at nothing. Sometimes she cried, sometimes she said nothing at all. The house that was once full of joy became empty and cold. Workers moved quietly. Nobody laughed. Nobody sang. Everything had changed. One evening, Akunne sat where her father used to sit. She looked at the sky. Tears rolled down her face. "Father, you said you would come back," she broke. "Mother, you promised." The wind blew gently, but it brought no comfort. Akunne hugged herself. She was alone. No father, no mother, no protection. Only silence, only pain. And somewhere in the darkness, danger was still waiting. Because the people who caused this tragedy were not done, and Akunne's suffering had only just begun. The village of Amako was still quiet with sadness. After many days of crying and mourning, the burial of Obina and Ngozi was finally over. The compound that was once full of joy now felt empty and cold. The drums had stopped, the visitors had gone. Only silence remained. Inside the house, Akunne sat on the floor, her back resting against the wall. Her eyes were swollen from crying. Her body was weak. She stared at nothing. It felt like her world had ended. Sometimes she would look toward the door, as if her parents would walk in again. But they never did. 3 days after the burial, something unexpected happened. Early in the morning, men began to gather in Obina's compound. Elders from Amako arrived one by one. They wore serious faces. They sat in a circle. Akunne watched them quietly, confused. She did not understand why they had come. Then she saw Nduka and Okoro walking in. They looked calm, too calm. Nduka carried a staff in his hand. Okoro followed beside him. They greeted the elders respectfully and sat down. Akunne felt a strange fear in her chest. Something was not right. After everyone settled, one elder cleared his throat. "We are here," he said slowly, "to discuss the properties of the late Obina." At the mention of her father's name, her heart began to beat fast. Nduka stood up slowly. "My elders," he began slowly, "Obina was our brother. His death is painful to us all." He paused, pretending to be emotional. "But life must continue. We must decide what happens to his properties. Akunne stood up slowly. Uncle, what do you mean? She asked, her voice shaking. Nduka did not look at her. Instead, he faced the elders. In our tradition, he said, a woman does not inherit her father's property. Akunne froze. Her ears rang. What? She whispered. Okoro stood up beside Nduka. It has always been like that. A daughter gets married and joined her husband's family. She cannot stay here and control her father's wealth. The elders nodded slowly. Some looked uncomfortable, but nobody spoke against it. Akunne stepped forward. No, that is not fair, she cried. This is my father's house. I am his only child. Her voice broke. I am not married yet. Please, let me stay here. Nduka finally turned to her. His face was hard. You are a woman, he said coldly. Your place is in your husband's house. Tears rolled down Akunne's face. I am not married yet, she said. Please, let me stay here. Okoro shook his head. That cannot happen. Akunne looked around at the elders. Please, she begged. You all knew my father. He loved me. He would never send me away. The elders avoided her eyes. One of them sighed. My daughter, we understand your pain. Then help me, Akunne cried. But the elder shook his head slowly. We must follow tradition. Those words hit Akunne like a heavy stone. Tradition. That was all they cared about. Not her pain, not her future, not her life. Nduka clapped his hands once. Let us not waste time, he said. He pointed toward the buildings. The big house will go to me. He pointed toward the farmland. The farms and barns will go to Okoro. Okoro nodded. Yes, that is fair. Akunne stared at them in shock. They were sharing everything. Everything her father worked for. Everything her mother cared for. As if she did not exist. No, she shouted. She ran forward and stood between them. You cannot do this. Her voice shook with anger and pain. This is my father's sweat. This is my home. Nduka pushed her aside gently but firmly. Control yourself, he said. I will not, Akunne cried. She turned to the elders again. Please, say something. But they remained silent. Some looked down, some closed their eyes. None of them stood for her. The sharing continued. Workers were called, instructions were given, things were divided, the house was measured, the lands were counted, even the animals were shared. Akunne watched as everything disappeared before her eyes. Her father's chair, her mother's cooking pots, the rooms she grew up in, all taken, all gone. She felt like she was standing in a dream, a bad dream she could not wake from. Later that day, Nduka returned to her. You cannot stay here anymore, he said. Akunne looked at him slowly. Where will I go? She asked weakly. That is not our problem, Okoro replied. You will soon be married. Your husband will take care of you. Akunne shook her head. I do not even know this husband. Nduka's voice became sharp. You do not have a choice. Akunne stepped back. Her body trembled. You are sending me away from my father's house? Nduka looked at her without emotion. Yes, that single word broke her completely. That night, Akunne sat alone in the empty compound. Most of the workers had left. Some buildings were already locked. The place felt strange, like it no longer belonged to her. She walked slowly into one of the rooms, her father's room. She touched the wall gently. Father, she whispered. Tears filled her eyes. They are taking everything. Her voice shook. You said this house was mine. She fell to the floor and cried. Not loud, not strong, just soft, broken tears. Outside, the moon shone quietly. The wind moved slowly. But inside Akunne's heart, a storm was rising. She had lost her parents. Now she had lost her home. Her blood had betrayed her, her own uncles had turned against her, and the village had watched in silence. Far away, Nduka and Okoro sat together again. This time, they smiled. "It is done," Okoro said. Nduka nodded. "Yes, everything is ours now." They drank palm wine and laughed softly. But somewhere deep in the night, a strange wind passed through Amako. Cold, quiet, watching. Because what they had taken by force would not remain in their hands forever. And Akunne's story was far from over. The morning in Amako was quiet. But inside the heart of Akunne, there was no peace. Only a few days had passed since her uncles took everything from her. The house she once called home no longer belonged to her. She moved like a stranger in a place that used to be hers. She had no strength left to fight. Then one morning, Nduka and Okoro came to her again. Their faces were serious. "Akunne," Nduka said, "we have made a decision for you." Akunne looked at them slowly. "What decision?" she asked in a weak voice. Okoro stepped forward. "You are getting married." Akunne froze. The words did not make sense at first. "Married?" she repeated. "Yes," Nduka said, "to a wealthy man in this village. His name is Agu." Akunne shook her head slowly. "No, I am not ready. I am still mourning my parents." Okoro's voice became hard. "This is not about what you want." Akunne stepped back. "I do not know this man. Please, give me time." But Nduka did not listen. "This marriage is already arranged. You will go to his house." Akunne's chest tightened. "Why are you doing this to me?" she cried. Nduka looked at her without emotion. "You are a woman. You must belong to a husband's house." Those words felt like a chain around her neck. Akunne lowered her head. Tears dropped slowly to the ground. She had no one to speak for her. No father, no mother, no protector. Only people who pushed her from one pain into another. In another part of Amako stood the large compound of Agu. Agu was a rich man. His compound was wide, with strong buildings and many workers. His family had land, money, and power. People respected them, but they also feared them. Because behind their wealth was pride, and behind their pride was wickedness. Inside the compound lived Agu's mother, Ezine. She was a strong woman with a sharp tongue. She believed that her family was better than others. Also living there was Agu's sister, Ugo. Ugo was young, proud, and jealous. She liked to mock people and laugh at their pain. That afternoon, Nduka and Okoro visited Agu's house. They sat with Agu and his family. Palm wine was served. Food was placed before them. Nduka spoke with a smile. "We have brought good news." Agu leaned back confidently. He asked, "What is it?" Okoro answered, "Our brother's daughter Akunne will be your wife." Agu raised his eyebrows slightly. He asked, "The daughter of Obina?" "Yes," Nduka replied. "She is now alone. This marriage will bring her into your great family." Agu was silent for a moment. Then he nodded. "Good," he said. "I accept." Ezine smiled faintly. "So she has no parents?" she asked. "No," Okoro said. "She has nobody." Ugo laughed softly. "That means she will not have a voice here." Ezine nodded. "She will learn how to behave." They all smiled. But it was not a kind smile. It was cold. Back in Obina's old compound, Akunne sat quietly while preparations were made. Women came to dress her. They wrapped her in fine cloth. They braided her hair. They told her to smile. But Akunne could not smile. Her eyes were empty. Her heart was heavy. This was not the marriage she dreamed of. There was no love, no joy, only fear. In the day of the marriage, drums were played, people gathered, songs were sung, but the happiness was not real. Akunne walked slowly, her head slightly bowed. Her legs felt weak. Her heart felt like it was breaking again. She looked around the crowd. She wished her parents were there. She wished someone would stop everything. But nobody did. Nduka stood proudly. Okoro smiled. They acted like they had done something good. But deep inside, Akunne knew the truth. She was not being given in marriage. She was being sent away. Soon, it was time. Akunne was led to Agu's compound. The drums followed. The people followed. But inside her heart, there was silence. When she reached the gate, she stopped for a moment. She looked at the house. Big, strong, beautiful. But something inside her whispered, "This is not your home." She stepped inside slowly. Inside the compound, Ezine stood waiting. She looked at Akunne from head to toe. Her eyes were sharp. "So, this is the girl," she said. Her voice was not warm. It was cold. Akunne bent down to greet her. "Good afternoon, Mama," she said softly. Ezine did not respond immediately. She only nodded slightly. Then Ugo stepped forward. She looked at Akunne carefully. Her lips curved into a small smile. "So, this is the rich man's daughter who has nothing now," she said. Akunne lowered her eyes. She said nothing. Ugo laughed. "She looks too quiet," she added. "We will see how long that lasts." Then Agu appeared. He stood tall and proud. He looked at Akunne like he was examining something. Not like a man looking at his wife, but like a man looking at something he owned. Akunne greeted him softly. He nodded once. "Welcome," he said. His voice was calm, but there was no warmth in it. As the celebration continued outside, Akunne was taken inside the house. She was shown a room. "This is where you will stay," Ugo said. The room was not as fine as the rest of the house. It was simple, almost empty. Akunne looked around slowly. She placed her hand on the wall. She felt cold, very cold. That night, Akunne sat alone on the bed. The sounds of laughter came from outside, but inside her room, there was silence. She hugged herself tightly. Tears rolled down her face. "This is my life now," she whispered. Her voice was weak. She closed her eyes, and in that moment, she understood one thing clearly. She had not entered a home, she had entered a place where she would be tested, where she would suffer, where she would be alone. Outside, the wind blew softly through the compound, but inside Akunne's heart, a quiet fear began to grow, because this marriage was not built on love, and her pain was only just beginning. Morning came early in the compound of Agu. The sky was still dark when Akunne opened her eyes. She did not wake up because she was rested. She woke up because she heard a loud knock on her door. "Wake up!" a sharp voice shouted. It was Ugu. "You cannot sleep like a lazy person in this house." Akunne quickly stood up from her small bed. Her body was still tired, but she did not want trouble. "I am coming," she said softly. She opened the door and stepped outside. The morning air was cold, but she had no time to feel it. Ugo folded her arms and looked at her with a mocking smile. "So, you finally woke up. In this house, we wake before the sun, not after it." Akunne bowed her head. "I am sorry," she said quietly. Ugo laughed. "You will say sorry every day until you learn." Akunne picked up a broom and began to sweep the large compound. The ground was wide and the walk was heavy. Dust rose into the air as she swept. Her hands moved quickly, but her body felt weak. When she walked, she remembered her father's house. She remembered how workers used to do this kind of work. She remembered how her mother would call her gently in the morning. Now everything was different. Here, there was no kindness, only orders, only pressure, only pain. After sweeping, she was sent to fetch water. The stream was far. She carried a big pot on her head and walked slowly. The path was rough and her legs ached. Other women at the stream looked at her. Some whispered, "Is that not Obina's daughter?" "Yes, what happened to her?" Akunne heard them, but she said nothing. She filled her pot and walked back carefully. By the time she reached the compound, sweat covered her body, but there was no rest. Inside the house, Ezinne sat on a chair, watching her. "You are too slow," Ezinne said. Akunne lowered the pot gently. "I am sorry, Mama," she said. Ezinne shook her head. "Sorry will not cook food," she replied. "Go and prepare breakfast." Akunne quickly moved to the kitchen. She washed the pots, she lit the fire, she prepared food. The heat from the fire burned her skin, but she continued. Her stomach was empty, but she could not eat. Not yet. Not until everyone else had eaten. Soon, the food was ready. She served Agu, Ezinne, and Ugo. They sat and ate. Akunne stood beside them quietly. Nobody asked her to sit. Nobody asked if she had eaten. Ugo tasted the food and frowned. "This soup is too salty," she said. Akunne's heart jumped. "I am sorry," she said quickly. Before she could say more, Agu dropped his spoon. His face became hard. "Come here," he said. Akunne walked closer slowly. Without warning, Agu slapped her. The sound echoed in the room. Akunne stumbled back. Her cheek burned with pain. "You cannot even cook properly?" Agu shouted. "I am sorry," she whispered, tears filling her eyes. Ezinne shook her head. "This girl will not bring anything good to this house," she said. Ugo laughed. "Maybe she was not taught well," she added. Akunne stood there, holding her cheek. Her heart felt like it was breaking again. After they finished eating, Akunne cleaned the plates. Only then did she eat. What remained was very small, cold, dry. But she ate it quietly because she had no choice. The day continued with more work. She washed clothes by hand. She cleaned the rooms. She fetched more water. She carried firewood. Her body became tired, but the work did not stop. Any time she slowed down, Ugo would shout, "Move faster!" Any time she made a small mistake, Ezinne would insult her, "Useless girl!" And Agu watched everything with cold eyes. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. And Akunne's life did not change. It only became worse. Her body grew thinner. Her skin lost its glow. Her eyes became dull. The beauty that people once admired slowly faded. But her pain grew stronger. One evening, Akunne was washing clothes when Ugo came and stood beside her. Ugo crossed her arms and smiled. "You used to be a rich man's daughter," she said. Akunne kept washing quietly. "Look at you now. You cannot even rest in your father's house." Akunne said nothing. Ugo bent closer. "Tell me, how does it feel to lose everything?" Tears filled her eyes, but she did not speak. Ugo laughed loudly. "I like this," she said. You are quiet. That is good. Stay that way. She turned and walked away. That night, Akunne lay on her small bed. Her body ached. Her heart was heavy. She stared at the ceiling. Tears rolled slowly down her face. "Father, Mother," she whispered. Her voice was weak. "Why did you leave me?" The room was silent. No answer came. Only the sound of her soft crying. Another day, another pain. One afternoon, Agu returned from outside. He looked angry. Akunne quickly brought water for him. But the water was not cold enough. Agu frowned. "Is this how you serve your husband?" he asked. "I am sorry," Akunne said quickly. But Agu was not calm. He pushed the cup away. Water spilled on the ground. "Useless!" he shouted. He stood up and hit her again. Akunne fell to the ground. Her body shook. But she did not fight back. She did not speak. She only endured. From that day, fear followed her everywhere. Every step she took, every word she spoke, every action she made. She was no longer living. She was only surviving. The compound that looked beautiful from outside was a place of suffering inside. A place where Akunne had no voice, no rest, no peace. One night, as the moon shone quietly in the sky, Akunne sat outside alone. The wind touched her face gently. For a moment, she closed her eyes. She remembered her father's voice. She remembered her mother's smile. Tears rolled down her face again. "I am tired," she whispered. Her voice was weak, almost like the wind. "I am very tired." The night remained silent. But far away, something unseen listened. Because pain like hers does not stay hidden forever. And the house of pain was slowly leading her to something deeper, something stronger, something that had not yet begun. Morning came again in the compound of Agu. Before the sun rose, Akunne was already awake. Her body was tired, but she had no choice. She stood up slowly from her small bed. Her legs hurt. Her back ached, but she picked up her broom and stepped outside. The compound was quiet. She began to sweep. As she walked, her mind was empty. She no longer thought about happiness. She no longer hoped for change. She simply did what she had to do, day after day, without rest, without love. Later that morning, she carried an empty pot on her head and walked toward the stream. The sun was just rising. The path was quiet. She walked slowly, her steps weak but steady. When she reached the stream, she bent down and filled her pot. As she stood up, she heard a soft voice behind her. "My daughter." Akunne turned quickly. She saw an older woman standing there. Her name was Ifeoma. Ifeoma was a poor widow who lived alone in a small hut near the edge of the village. Her clothes were simple, but her face was kind. Akunne had seen her before, but they had never spoken. Ifeoma walked closer slowly. "I have been watching you," she said gently. Akunne lowered her eyes. "Good morning, Mama," she said. Ifeoma nodded. "You are Obina's daughter," she said. At the mention of her father, Akunne's eyes filled with tears. "Yes," she whispered. Ifeoma looked at her carefully. "You are suffering," she said softly. Akunne said nothing. She did not need to speak. it was clear in her eyes. Ifeoma reached into a small basket she was carrying. She brought out a piece of food and handed it to Akunne. "Take," she said. Akunne shook her head quickly. "No, Mama, I cannot." Ifeoma held her hand. "You are hungry," she said. "Do not be afraid." Akunne hesitated. Then slowly she took the food. Her hands trembled. "Thank you," she whispered. Ifeoma smiled softly. "Eat before you go." Akunne sat down near the water and ate. It was not much, but to her it felt like everything. Tears rolled down her face as she ate, not just because of hunger, but because someone had shown her kindness. From that day, something small changed in her life. Whenever Akunne went to the stream, Ifeoma would be there. Sometimes she brought food. Sometimes she only spoke gentle words. "My daughter, do not lose yourself," Ifeoma would say. Akunne would listen quietly. One day, Ifeoma held her hand and said, "Pain can break a person, but it can also make a person strong." Akunne looked at her slowly. "I am tired of being strong," she said. Ifeoma sighed. "I understand, but your story is not finished." Those words stayed in Akunne's heart. Back in the compound, nothing changed. Ezine still insulted her. "You are slow. You are useless. You bring nothing to this house." Ogu still mocked her. "Look at your face. You are no longer beautiful. Even your father's wealth could not save you." And Ago still treated her with coldness and anger. Nothing changed. Except one thing. Akunne no longer felt completely alone. Meanwhile, in another part of Amako, a young man named Chidi walked through the village. Chidi was known to be calm and observant. He did not talk too much, but he noticed everything around him. On that day, he stopped near the road outside the village. He looked down at the ground. His face became serious. "This place," he said quietly. It was the same road where Obina and Gozi had been attacked. Chidi bent down and touched the ground. Something did not feel right. He stood up slowly and looked around. The trees stood quietly. The road was empty. But inside his heart, there was a question. "This was not ordinary," he whispered. Later that day, Chidi sat with an old man. "Do you believe what they said?" Chidi asked. The old man looked at him. "What do you mean?" Chidi spoke slowly. "They said Obina was attacked by unknown people." The old man nodded. "Yes." Chidi shook his head. "I do not believe it." The old man frowned. "Why?" Chidi leaned forward. "And look at what happened after his death. His brothers took everything quickly, too quickly." The old man was silent. Chidi continued. "And look at what happened after his death. His brothers took everything quickly, too quickly." The old man looked around carefully. "Lower your voice," he said. Chidi nodded, but his eyes were serious. "Something is wrong," he said. "I can feel it." Later that day, Chidi passed by Agu's compound. He saw Akunne carrying firewood. She walked slowly, her body bent under the weight. Chidi stopped. He watched her for a moment. "This is Obina's daughter," he said quietly. He remembered how she used to look. Strong, beautiful, full of life. Now, she looked tired, broken, almost like a shadow. Chidi felt something inside him. "This is not right," he said. Akunne noticed him standing there. For a moment, their eyes met. Chidi quickly looked away and continued walking. She did not want trouble, but that small moment stayed in Chidi's mind. That night, Akunne returned to her room. Her body was tired again, but her heart was slightly different. She sat down and closed her eyes. She remembered Ifeoma's words, "You are not alone." For the first time in a long time, she felt a small warmth inside her. Very small, but real. Outside, the night was quiet. The moon shone softly over Amako, but in the hearts of two people, something was beginning. In Akunne, a small light of hope. In Chidi, a growing suspicion. Because while Akunne suffered in silence, someone was starting to ask questions, and the truth was slowly rising. Morning came, but for Akunne, it felt like night never ended. Her body was weak, her eyes were heavy, but she still woke up before everyone. She stepped outside quietly and began her walk. Sweep, fetch water, cook, clean. The same walk, the same pain, every day. That afternoon, the sun was hot. Akunne stood in the kitchen, cooking. Smoke filled her eyes. Sweat ran down her face. Her hands moved fast, but her body felt slow. Suddenly, Ugo walked in. She tasted the food. Her face changed. "This is not good," she said sharply. Akunne quickly turned. "I am sorry." Before she could finish, Ugo threw the spoon down. "You are always sorry," she shouted. Then she called out, "Brother!" Moments later, Agu entered the kitchen. He looked serious. "What is it?" he asked. Ugo pointed at Akunne. "She has spoilt the food again." Akunne shook her head quickly. "I did not." But Agu did not wait. He walked forward and grabbed her arm roughly. "You cannot do anything right," he shouted. "I am trying," Akunne cried. But his anger was already burning. He pushed her. She fell to the ground. Before she could stand up, he hit her again. The pain was sharp. Her body shook. "Please," she begged softly, but Agu did not stop. Ezine stood at the door watching. Instead of stopping him, she said, "She needs to learn." Ugo folded her arms and smiled. "Yes, let her learn." Akunne cried. Not loud, just soft, broken, but nobody listened. After the beating, Agu walked away. Ugo followed him. Ezine turned and left. The kitchen became quiet. Only Akunne remained on the floor. She did not move at first. Her body hurt too much. Her heart hurt even more. Slowly, she pushed herself up. Tears rolled down her face. She looked around. Empty. Cold. No one cared. She stepped out of the kitchen slowly. Her legs were shaking. Her body felt heavy. But something inside her had changed. Something had broken. Without thinking, she walked toward the gate. No one stopped her. No one called her back. She left the compound quietly. The road to the river was long. The sun was still hot, but Akunne did not feel it. She walked slowly, step by step. Her eyes were filled with tears. Her heart was full of pain. When she reached the river, the place was quiet. The water moved gently. The trees stood still. No one was there. Akunne dropped to her knees. She looked at the water. Her reflection stared back at her, but she did not recognize herself. She looked weak, broken, lost. Suddenly, her tears began to fall freely. "Father," she cried. Her voice shook. "Mother!" She placed her hands on the ground. "Why did you leave me?" she cried. The sound of her voice echoed softly. The river remained calm, but Akunne's heart was not calm. "I am tired," she said. "I am tired of the pain, the insults, the beating." Her voice broke. I have no one. She looked up at the sky. If you can hear me, please help me. Her tears dropped into the water. If my parents can see me, please come to me. The wind blew softly. The trees moved slightly, but no answer came. Akunne bent forward and cried deeply. Her whole body shook. All the pain she had kept inside came out. Every insult, every slap, every lonely night, everything. She cried until her voice became weak, until her body became still. As she sat there, something strange happened. The air around her became very quiet, too quiet. Even the birds stopped singing. The water looked still, almost like it was watching her. Akunne slowly lifted her head. Her heart beat fast. She looked round, but she saw no one. Then she heard it, a soft voice, very soft. Akunne. She froze. Her eyes widened. She looked behind her quickly. No one. She stood up slowly. Her body trembled. Who is there? She asked. No answer. Only silence. She took a step back. Her heart was beating fast. Then, again, Akunne. The voice was clearer now, coming from the water. Akunne looked at the river. Her breath became heavy. Fear entered her heart. She stepped back again. No, she whispered. She turned and ran. She ran as fast as her weak body could carry her. She did not stop. She did not look back. By the time she reached Agu's compound, the sun was going down. She entered quietly. Nobody asked where she had been. Nobody cared. She went straight to her room and closed the door. Her body shook. Her heart raced. What was that? She whispered. She sat on the bed and held herself tightly. I am imagining things, she said. But deep inside, she knew what she heard was real. That night, Akunne could not sleep easily. When she finally closed her eyes, something happened. She found herself standing by the river again. But this time, it was different. The water was glowing, soft, bright, beautiful. Akunne looked around slowly. Everything felt calm, too calm. Then she saw someone, a woman standing inside the river. The woman was tall and beautiful. She wore white beads. Her skin shone like light. Her eyes were deep and powerful. Akunne could not move. She watched in silence. The woman looked at her. Then she spoke. Akunne. Her voice was calm, strong, familiar. Akunne's heart beat fast. Who are you? She asked softly. The woman stepped closer. You called, she said. Akunne shook her head slowly. I was crying. The woman nodded. The earth heard you, she said. The river heard you. Akunne felt a strange feeling in her chest. Why me? She asked. The woman's eyes softened. You are not alone, she said. Akunne's eyes filled with tears. I have no one, she whispered. The woman looked at her deeply. You have more than you know. The water around her moved gently. Then she said one last thing. Your story has just begun. Suddenly, Akunne woke up. She sat up quickly. Her heart was beating fast. Her body was sweating. The room was dark, quiet. She looked around. Nothing was there. But the dream felt real, very real. She touched her chest. Her breathing slowly calmed. What is happening to me? She whispered. Outside, the night was silent. But deep in the river, something had been awakened. And Akunne was no longer just a woman in pain. Something was beginning, something powerful, something that would change everything. Night came slowly in the compound of Agu. The moon rose high in the sky. The wind was calm. Everything looked peaceful. But inside the heart of Akunne, there was no peace. Since the night she went to the river, something had changed inside her. The dream she had was still fresh in her mind. The voice, the woman in the water, the words she heard, "You are not alone." Akunne did not understand it, but she could not forget it. That night, after everyone had eaten, Akunne was still working. She was washing plates behind the house. Her body was tired, but she continued. She always continued. As she worked, she noticed something strange. The compound was quieter than usual, too quiet. Then she saw movement. From the corner of her eye, she saw Ugo walking quickly toward the inner room. A few moments later, Ezine followed. Then Agu also went inside. Akunne stopped washing. Her hands froze. Why are they all gathering at this time, she wondered. Her heart began to beat slowly. Then she saw something that made her even more curious. Two men entered the compound quietly. They were not strangers. They were Nduka and Okoro. Akunne's breath caught. Her uncles, at this time of night, something was wrong, very wrong. So, Akunne quickly wiped her hands and moved quietly. She did not want to be seen. She walked slowly toward the inner room. Her heart beat faster with every step. She reached the wall and stood close to it. The door was slightly open. Voices came from inside, low, careful. Akunne leaned closer. She held her breath and she listened. Inside the room, Nduka spoke first. "Everything is moving as planned," he said. Agu nodded. "Yes, she is completely under control." Akunne's heart jumped. She thought. Were they talking about her? Okoro laughed softly. "She has no strength left, no one to protect her." Ezine added, "That girl has become nothing, just the way we wanted." Akunne's body trembled. Her hands became cold. She leaned closer. Her heart was beating loudly in her chest. Then Nduka said something that made her blood freeze. If Obina had not died, none of this would be possible. Akunne's eyes widened. Her breath stopped. She listened carefully. Okoro spoke next. It was a risk, but it was worth it. Agu nodded slowly. Yes, that road attack solved everything. Akunne covered her mouth with her hand. Her whole body shook. "No," she whispered inside her heart. "No." Ezine spoke with a low voice. "And bringing her into this house was the best part." Ugo laughed along. "Yes, now she suffers every day and she cannot run." Akunne felt her legs weaken. Tears filled her eyes. She could not believe what she was hearing. Nduka continued. "Once Obina and Ngozi were gone, everything became easy." Okoro nodded. "Yes, taking the property was simple. Nobody questioned us." Agu added, "And with her here, she can never fight back." Akunne's heart broke into pieces. Her parents, her father, her mother, they were not killed by strangers. They were killed by her own blood, by the people she trusted, by the people in that room. Her body shook violently. Tears rolled down her face silently. She wanted to scream. She wanted to run inside and ask them why. But fear held her back. Deep fear. Cold fear. Inside the room, Ugo spoke again. "She almost looks like she wants to die sometimes," she said with a smile. Ezine replied, "That would make things easier." Agu nodded yes, But until then, let her continue like this. Nduka added, she must never know the truth. Akunne's heart pounded loudly. She stepped back slowly. Her breathing became heavy, very heavy. Suddenly, her foot hit something on the ground. A small sound came out. Tak. Inside the room, everything became quiet. Ago turned his head quickly. Did you hear that? He asked. Akunne froze. Her body became still. Her heart felt like it would jump out of her chest. Ugo stood up. I will check, she said. Akunne quickly moved away from the door. She hid behind a wall. Her body pressed tightly against it. Her breath was fast, very fast. The door opened. Ugo stepped outside. She looked around. The compound was quiet, dark, still. Akunne held her breath. If she was seen, everything will change. Ugo walked a few steps forward. She looked left, then right. Then she frowned. Maybe it was nothing, she said. She turned and went back inside. The door closed. Akunne remained still. Her body was shaking. Tears rolled down her face, but she did not make a sound. Slowly, slowly, she moved away, step by step, until she reached her room. She closed the door quietly. Then she fell to the ground. Her hands covered her face. Her body shook with silent tears. My parents, she whispered. They killed them. Her voice broke. My own uncles. And my husband. Her heart felt like it was tearing apart. All this time, she thought her life was just bad luck. She thought her suffering was just fate. But now she knew the truth. Everything was planned. Everything. Her pain, her marriage, her suffering, it was all part of a wicked plan. She hugged herself tightly. Fear filled her heart. They will kill me too, she whispered. Her breathing became fast. Her eyes were wide. She felt trapped, completely trapped. That night, Akunne did not sleep. She sat in the dark, thinking, crying, shaking. The truth had entered her life, and it was heavier than anything she had ever felt. Outside, the night remained calm, but inside Akunne, a storm had begun. A storm of pain, a storm of truth, a storm that would not stop, because now she knew. And once truth is known, nothing can ever be the same again. Night covered the compound of Agu like a dark cloth. The air was heavy. The wind moved slowly. Inside her small room, Akunne sat on the floor, shaking. Her eyes were wide. Her heart was beating fast. The truth she heard earlier refused to leave her mind. Her uncles, Nduka and Okoro, had killed her parents, and her husband Agu knew everything. Even his mother Izne and sister Ugo were part of it. Akunne held her head. Her body trembled. They killed them, she whispered. Tears rolled down her face. And they brought me here to suffer? Her voice broke. Fear filled her chest. They will kill me too. She stood up slowly. Her legs were weak. I must leave, she said quietly. I must run. But before she could move, she heard footsteps coming closer. Her heart jumped. The door opened suddenly. Agu stood there. Behind him were Ezine, Ugo, Nduka, and Okoro. Akunne froze. Her breath stopped. They all stared at her. Silence filled the room. Then Agu spoke slowly. You were listening. It was not a question. It was a statement. Akunne stepped back. I was not. Do not lie, Ogo shouted. You are there. Unduka's face became dark. How much did you hear? He asked. Akunne shook her head, fear all over her face. I did not hear anything, she said weakly. Okoro stepped forward. Look at her, he said. She is shaking. Ezine's voice was cold. She knows. Akunne's heart pounded loudly. No, please, she begged. I did not hear anything. But her voice betrayed her. Agu moved closer. His eyes were hard. You heard everything, he said. Akunne fell to her knees. Please, she cried, do not hurt me. But her words meant nothing to them. Unduka looked at the others. She cannot be allowed to speak, he said. Okoro nodded. If she talks, we are finished. Akunne cried louder. I will not talk, I promise. But Agu's face showed no mercy. You should not have listened, he said. Then suddenly he grabbed her arm and pulled her up. Akunne screamed, please, please. But the beating started. Hard, fast, painful. Ugo pushed her. Ezine slapped her. Agu hit her again and again. Unduka and Okoro stood there watching with cold eyes. Rain began to fall. At first, it was light. Then it became heavy. Thunder sounded in the sky. But inside the compound, the beating continued. Akunne's body shook with pain. Her cries became weak. Please, she whispered. Please. But no one listened. Her strength began to leave her. Her body became heavy. Her eyes started to close. Then suddenly, a loud thunder struck. The sound shocked everyone. For a moment, they paused. Akunne fell to the ground. Not moving, not speaking. Only the rain touched her body. Agu stepped back. Take her away, Izine said coldly. Let her disappear. Ugu nodded. Yes, nobody will question it. But at that moment, something unexpected happened. Akunne opened her eyes slightly, very slowly, very weak. She saw the rain. She felt the cold ground. Something inside her pushed her. She used the last strength she had, and she crawled, slowly, quietly, through the rain. No one noticed at first. The darkness covered her. The rain hid her movement. By the time they realized she was gone, it was too late. Where is she? Agu shouted. They looked around, but Akunne was no longer there. Outside the compound, the rain fell heavily. The night was dark. Akunne dragged her body along the ground. Her clothes were soaked. Her body was covered in mud. Her breathing was weak, but she kept moving toward one place, the river. The path was long. Her strength was almost gone. She fell many times, but she stood again, step by step, pain after pain, until she reached the river. The river was wild that night. The water moved fast. The wind blew strongly. The rain poured heavily. Akunne fell near the edge. Her body could not move anymore. She lay there, breathing slowly, her eyes half closed. With the last strength in her body, she whispered, Father. Tears mixed with the rain. Mother. Her voice was very weak. They killed you. Her chest rose slowly. I have no one. She looked at the water. Her vision was fading. Then she remembered the voice from the river, the woman in her dream. Akunne opened her mouth again. She whispered, Nemiri, if you are real. Her voice broke. Help me. Her body became still. The rain continued to fall. The river moved strongly. The wind howled. Then everything became quiet. Very quiet. Too quiet. Morning came. The rain had stopped. The sky was clear. Birds began to sing again. Villagers passed near the river, but something was strange. There was nobody, no sign of Akunne, only wet ground and silence. Back in Agu's compound, fear began to rise. They searched, they asked, but no one saw her, no one knew where she was. Agu's face became tense. Nduka and Okoro were silent. Izini and Ugu looked at each other. Something was not right. Something had changed. Because Akunne did not die like a normal person, she called on something ancient, something powerful. And the river had answered. 7 days passed in the village of Amako, but peace did not return. Inside the compound of Agu, fear lived quietly in every corner. Since the night Akunne disappeared, nothing felt normal again. No one spoke about it openly, but everyone was thinking the same thing. Where did she go? Did she die? Or did something take her? On the first day after she disappeared, they searched for her near the river. On the second day, they searched the bushes. By the third day, people began to whisper. Some said she ran away. Some said wild animals took her. Others said the river had claimed her. But deep inside, Agu, Ezine, Ugo, Unduka, and Okoro did not believe any of those things. They remembered her last words. They remembered how she called the river, and that memory stayed with them like a shadow. By the 7th day, the fear had grown stronger. Even the servants in the compound moved carefully. At night, no one stayed outside for too long. The wind sounded strange. The silence felt heavy. It was as if the land itself was waiting. That evening, the sky was calm. The sun went down slowly and darkness covered the village. Inside the compound, Agu sat quietly. He tried to drink palm wine, but his hands were not steady. Ugo walked around restlessly. Ezine sat still, but her face showed worry. No one spoke about Akunne, but her absence filled the air. Then something happened. The gate made a soft sound. At first, no one noticed, but then one of the servants who was passing by stopped suddenly. His eyes widened. He dropped the tray he was holding. "Ah!" he shouted. Everyone turned. A figure stood at the entrance, still, quiet, watching. The servant stepped back slowly, fear covering his face. It is her," he stammered. Agu stood up quickly. "Who?" he asked. But even before the servant could answer, Agu saw. Standing at the gate was Akunne, alive, walking slowly into the compound. No one moved. No one spoke. It was as if time stopped. Akunne stepped forward gently. Her feet touched the ground softly. Her clothes were clean. Her body had no sign of the wounds from that night. Her face looked calm, but something was different. Her eyes. They were deeper, colder, stronger. Not the eyes of the woman they used to know. Ugo screamed. "No, no, it cannot be." She stepped back shaking. Ezine's hands trembled. "This is not possible," she whispered. Agu remained frozen. His eyes could not leave her. "Akunne," he said slowly. Akunne stopped in the middle of the compound. She looked at all of them, one by one. Her face showed no anger, no pain, no fear, only calmness. Then she spoke. "I am back." Her voice was soft, but it carried weight, heavy weight. The kind that makes the heart shake. Ugo began to cry. "She is not human," she shouted. Ezine stepped back. "Stay away from her." But Akunne did not move towards them. She only stood there, watching. Then she turned slowly and walked inside the house. No one stopped her. No one dared to touch her. She entered her old room, closed the door, and sat down quietly. Inside the room, everything looked the same, but she was not the same. She touched the wall gently. Then she closed her eyes. A soft breath left her lips. Outside, the compound was in confusion. "What is this?" Ugo cried. "She died. I saw her. We all saw her." Ezine shook her head. "This is not ordinary," she said. Ago remained silent. His mind was racing. He remembered the river. He remembered her last words, and now she was back. That night, nobody slept well. The wind blew slowly. The trees moved quietly. But inside the compound, fear grew like a shadow. Strange things began to happen. A pot that was placed on the fire suddenly fell without anyone touching it. A door opened slowly on its own. A cold wind passed through the rooms even though all the windows were closed. The servants whispered among themselves, "This is not normal. Something has followed her back. Or she has become something else." Inside her room, Akunne sat still. Her eyes opened slowly. For a moment, they shone faintly in the darkness. Then she stood up and walked outside. Her steps were slow, calm. She passed by the kitchen. The fire suddenly became weak. She passed by the corridor. The air became cold, very cold. A servant saw her and ran away in fear. Akunne did not stop. She walked through the compound like someone who did not belong to the living. When she reached the open space, she stopped and looked at the sky. The moon shone brightly. Her face reflected its light. Then she spoke softly. "I am here." Her voice disappeared into the night. Back inside, Agu felt something strange. A sudden fear entered his chest. He stood up quickly. Something was wrong. Very wrong. He walked outside slowly. And there he saw her, standing under the moonlight, still, silent, watching the sky. "Akunne," he called. She turned slowly. Her eyes met his. And in that moment, Agu felt something he had never felt before. Fear. Deep fear. Not of a woman, but of something beyond him. Something he could not control. Something he could not understand. Akunne looked at him for a few seconds. Then she smiled slightly. A calm, quiet smile. Not friendly, not warm, just knowing. Then she turned and walked away. Agu stood there, frozen. Because at that moment, he knew one thing. The woman they beat, the woman they broke, the woman they left to die, had returned. But she did not return the same. And whatever had come back into his house was not something he could fight. The fear had only just begun. Morning came in Amako, but it did not feel like a normal morning. Inside the compound of Agu, there was no peace. Since the return of Akunne, fear had settled like a heavy cloth over the house. No one spoke freely anymore. Every movement was careful. Every sound felt loud. Akunne woke up quietly as usual, but she did not rush like before. She did not run from place to place. She did not look afraid. She simply stood, washed her face, and walked out slowly. Her steps were calm, her eyes were steady. It was as if she no longer belonged to the same life. The servants noticed first. They stepped aside whenever she passed. Some avoided looking at her, others whispered quietly, "She is not the same. There is something in her. I feel it." Akunne did not answer anyone. She only walked past them like the wind. That same morning, Ugu woke up angry. She had not slept well the night before. Every small sound had disturbed her. Her body felt hot and uncomfortable. She stepped out of her room and shouted, "Where is that girl?" No one answered. She walked toward the kitchen and saw Akunne standing there quietly, arranging things. Ugu's face twisted with anger. "So you are here, standing like nothing happened." Akunne looked at her slowly, but said nothing. That silence made Ugu even more angry. "Answer me when I speak," she shouted. Still, Akunne said nothing. Ugu stepped closer and raised her hand to slap her. But something strange happened. Her hand stopped in the air, just like that. She tried again. Her hand remained stuck. Her face changed. "What is this?" she said, her voice shaking. She tried again. Her hand remained stuck. Akunne only looked at her calmly. Then she turned and walked away. Ugu began to panic. "My hand!" she shouted. "My hand!" She struggled, but her arm would not move. Fear entered her heart. "Help me!" she screamed. Servants ran to her, but no one could explain what was happening. Her arm stayed frozen in the air. Tears filled her eyes. "What is happening to me?" she cried. No one answered. From that moment, Ugu's suffering began. Later that day, her condition became worse. Her body felt heavy. Her skin began to itch. Strange marks appeared on her arms. She scratched and scratched, but the pain did not stop. She cried loudly, "Call someone! Call a dibia!" But even her voice sounded weak. People began to whisper again. It started after Akunne returned. This is not ordinary. Inside the house, Izine tried to stay strong. She refused to show fear, but deep inside, her heart was not at peace. She sat in the main room, giving orders. Cook the food properly. Clean the floor well. But things were not going the way they used to. The servants made mistakes. The food burned. Pots broke without reason. Water spilled on the ground. Izine became frustrated. "What is wrong with all of you?" she shouted. But the servants only looked at each other in fear. That afternoon, Izine decided to cook by herself. She entered the kitchen with anger. "I will show you how it is done," she said. She lit the fire. She placed the pot. She began to cook. But after a few minutes, something strange happened. The fire went out, just like that. She tried again. It went out again. She frowned. "What nonsense is this?" She lit it again, but this time the pot fell on its own. Hot water spilled everywhere. Izine jumped back. Her heart beat fast. She looked around. No one was there. Only silence. Cold silence. She slowly stepped out of the kitchen. For the first time in her life, Izine felt fear in her own house. Meanwhile, Agu tried to ignore everything. He sat in his room, trying to drink palm wine, but his mind was not calm. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw something. At first, it was small, a shadow, a movement, but then it became clearer. That night, as he lay down to sleep, he heard a voice, soft, weak, calling his name. Agu. He opened his eyes quickly. "Who is there?" he asked. No answer. He sat up. His heart was beating fast. Then he heard it again. Agu. He turned toward the corner of the room, and what he saw made his body freeze. Standing there was Akunne, but not the Akunne he saw outside. This one was different. Her body looked wounded. Her clothes were wet. Her eyes were filled with pain. just like the night they beat her. Agu jumped up. "No!" he shouted. But in the next moment, she disappeared. The room became empty again. Agu's breathing became heavy. Sweat covered his body. "What is happening?" he whispered. That night, he did not sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her again, standing, watching, silent. The next day, the whole village began to talk. People gathered in small groups. They whispered quietly, "Have you heard? Something is happening in Agu's house. Ugo is sick. Iziene cannot control her home. They say strange things are happening." Then someone said softly, "And that girl, Akunne, she's not normal again." The others nodded. "I saw her yesterday. Her eyes, they are different." Another added, "When she passed me, I felt cold, like wind from the grave." Fear spread slowly through Amako. Children were warned not to go near Agu's compound. Women spoke in low voices. Men shook their heads. Something had changed, and everyone could feel it. Back in the compound, Akunne walked quietly as always. She did not shout. She did not fight. She did not argue. But wherever she went, something unseen followed. Something powerful. She stood in the middle of the compound for a moment. Her eyes moved slowly across the house. Then she spoke softly. "Justice has started." No one heard her, but the wind carried her words, and deep in the hearts of those who heard her, fear grew stronger. Because this was only the beginning of judgment. Morning came slowly in Amako, but the air felt different. The village was quiet, yet something unseen moved through it like a whisper. People woke up feeling uneasy. Some could not explain it. Some said they had strange dreams. Others said they felt like someone was calling them. Inside the compound of Agu, Akunne stood still in the open space. Her face was calm, but her eyes were deep and powerful. She had not slept. She did not look tired. Instead, she looked like someone who had made a decision. She stepped forward slowly and spoke in a low voice. "Today, the truth will speak." No one heard her clearly, but something carried her words into the air. Not long after, people began to move toward the village square. Nobody sent a message. Nobody called them with drums. Yet, men, women, and even children walked there like they were being pulled. In their houses, they stopped what they were doing. In the farms, some dropped their tools. At the market, traders left their goods. One by one, they all moved toward the same place, the village square. People looked at each other in confusion. Did someone call a meeting? I did not hear anything. Then why are we all going there? Nobody had an answer. Soon, the square was full. The elders sat in their usual place. Women stood in groups. Men looked around, waiting. The air felt heavy, very heavy. Then she appeared. Akunne walked into the square slowly. Silence fell immediately. Every eye turned to her. Some people gasped. Some stepped back. Some whispered, "That is her. She is alive, but she died." Akunne stopped in the middle of the square. She looked at everyone, calm, still. Then she spoke. "My people," she said softly. Her voice was not loud, but everyone heard it clearly, very clearly. I have come to speak the truth. The elders looked at each other. One of them cleared his throat. My daughter, what truth are you speaking of? He asked. Akunne turned her eyes toward him. The truth that was buried, she said. A cold wind passed through the square. People shifted where they stood. Something was not right. Then suddenly, two men entered the square. It was Nduka and Okoro. They looked confused, almost like they did not plan to come, but their legs had brought them there. Behind them came Agu, Ezine, and Ugo. Their faces showed fear. They did not want to be there, but they could not stop themselves. The crowd moved aside for them. Akunne watched them quietly. Then she raised her hand slowly. The sky became darker. Clouds covered the sun. The wind grew stronger. People began to murmur. What is happening? Akunne's voice came again. Stand there, she said. Her eyes were fixed on Nduka and Okoro, and as if something held them, they stopped moving. They stood in front of her, their bodies stiff, their faces pale. They tried to move, but they could not. Fear filled their eyes. Akunne took a step forward. Speak, she said. Nduka shook his head. I have nothing to say, but his voice sounded strange, like it was not fully his. Akunne looked at him deeply. Speak the truth, she said again. Suddenly, Nduka's body shook. His mouth opened, and words began to come out. Not gently, not slowly, but forcefully. We killed him, he shouted. The crowd gasped. Silence followed. Then noise. What did he say? Who did they kill? Nduka's voice rose again. We killed Obina. A loud cry came from the crowd. Women covered their mouths. Men stepped back. Shock filled the square. Okoro began to shake. No, no, he said. But his own voice betrayed him. Yes, we planned it, he shouted suddenly. His eyes were wide with fear. We arranged the attack on the road. People shouted, this is evil. This is wickedness. Akunne stood still. Her face did not change. Nduka continued speaking. We wanted his wealth. We could not stand his success. Tears began to fall from some people in the crowd. Obina had been loved. Ngozi had been kind. Now the truth was coming out. Raw, painful, clear. Okoro cried loudly. We did not do it alone. The crowd became quiet again. Who else? Someone shouted. Okoro pointed with a shaking hand. At them. His finger moved toward Agu and his family. We helped them. A loud noise rose from the crowd. People shouted in anger. Agu stepped back. No, that is a lie, he said. But his voice was weak. Ezine's face turned pale. Ugo began to cry. But it was too late. The truth was already out. Nduka spoke again. We arranged everything, even her marriage, he shouted, pointing at Akunne. We wanted her far away. We wanted her weak. Akunne closed her eyes slowly. A single tear rolled down her cheek. The pain was deep, but her face remained calm. The elders stood up. Their faces were full of anger. This is a great abomination, one elder shouted. You killed your own brother? You destroyed your own blood? The crowd became restless. Some people picked up stones. Others shouted curses. You must pay. You will not stay in this village. Agu tried to speak again. "We did not mean—" But his words were cut off. The noise was too much. Anger filled the air. Akunne raised her hand again. Slowly, the noise began to die down. Silence returned. She opened her eyes. "The truth is now known," she said. Her voice was calm but powerful. No one argued. No one questioned her, because what they saw was beyond understanding. Nduka and Okunu fell to their knees. Their bodies were weak, like something had left them. They cried. They begged, but nobody listened. The villagers turned their backs on them. Disgust filled their faces. Akunne looked at them one last time. Then she turned and walked away. No one stopped her. No one spoke. The wind moved softly again. But the village of Amako would never be the same, because the truth had been revealed. And once truth is known, there is no going back. The village square of Amako did not return to normal after the truth was revealed. People stood in groups, talking loudly, their voices filled with anger and shock. The names of Nduka and Okoro were now spoken with disgust. No one looked at them with respect anymore. No one called them brothers again. They were now seen as men who killed their own blood. The elders did not waste time. They gathered quickly and made a decision. One of the oldest men stood up and spoke with a strong voice. "This kind of evil cannot stay in our land. Anyone who kills his brother for wealth has no place in Amako." The crowd agreed loudly, "Yes, they must go." Nduka and Okoro were brought forward. Their bodies were weak. Their pride was gone. They looked like broken men. They fell to their knees, crying and begging. "Please forgive us," Nduka said. "We made a mistake." Okoro added, "We were blinded by greed. Give us another chance." But no one listened. A woman stepped forward angrily. "Did you give Obina another chance?" she shouted. Another man pointed at them. "Did you remember mercy when you planned his death?" The cries of the villagers grew louder. Stones were almost picked, but the elders raised their hands to stop them. "No blood will be shed today," one elder said, "but they will not stay here." Then the judgment was spoken. "All the properties you took will be returned. Every land, every house, every farm will go back to its rightful owner. And you too will leave this village before the sun sets. If you are seen here again, you will not be spared." A loud sound of agreement filled the square. Nduka and Okoro cried harder, but it was finished. Their wealth was gone, their power was gone, their place in the village was gone. They stood up slowly, like men who had lost everything, and walked away in shame. People turned their backs on them. No one followed, no one helped. That was the price of their wickedness. Meanwhile, all eyes turned to Agu and his family. The anger in the crowd did not leave them out. Someone shouted, "You helped them." Someone said, "You hid the truth." Agu tried to speak, but his voice failed him. The elders looked at him with hard eyes. "Your household has brought shame to this village. What happens to you will come in its own time." That sentence alone was enough to shake Agu. Because now, he knew judgment had not finished. It had only started. Back in his compound, nothing felt the same again. The house that once stood strong now felt empty and weak. Servants began to leave quietly. Some said they were afraid, others said they did not want to be part of a cursed house. Inside, Izine sat quietly. She no longer shouted orders like before. Her voice had lost its strength. Her eyes moved around nervously, like someone expecting something to happen. Ugo stayed inside her room most of the time. Her condition had not improved. Her body still itched. Her arms still felt strange. She cried often, calling for help that did not come. Ago walked around like a man lost in his own thoughts. The visions had not stopped. Every night he still saw Akunne in her wounded form. Sometimes she stood at the door. Sometimes she stood behind him. Sometimes she whispered his name. He could not escape it. He could not sleep. He could not think clearly. The fear inside him grew stronger each day. And in the middle of all this, Akunne walked quietly. She did not celebrate. She did not smile. She did not speak much. The truth had come out. Justice had begun. But her heart was not at peace. That evening, as the sun went down, Akunne walked toward the river again. Her steps were slow but steady. The path was quiet. The wind moved softly around her. When she reached the river, she stood still and looked at the water. The surface was calm, but deep inside, something was moving. Akunne closed her eyes. Then she heard it again, the voice, soft, deep, calling her, Akunne. Her eyes opened slowly. She did not run this time. She did not fear. She stood still, listening. You have started, the voice said. Akunne's heart beat slowly. I have done what I can, she whispered. But the voice answered again, No, your work is not finished. The wind grew slightly stronger. The water moved gently. Akunne stepped closer. What more is left? She asked. There was a short silence. Then the voice came again. Many still suffer. Akunne's face became still. Many cry in silence, the voice continued. Many are treated like you were treated. Akunne's chest rose slowly. She remembered the pain, the insults, the loneliness. You were chosen, the voice said. Akunne shook her head slowly. I am just a woman, she replied, but the voice was firm. You are more. The river moved again, soft but powerful. Complete it, the voice said. Akunne stood still for a long time. The sky grew darker. The first stars appeared. Her mind was filled with thoughts. Justice had started. But now she understood something deeper. This was not only about her. It was bigger, much bigger. She turned slowly and walked away from the river. Her face was calm, but her eyes had changed again. Stronger, deeper, because now she knew her journey was not over, and what was coming next would be greater than everything that had happened before. The night after Akunne returned from the river, something inside her felt different. It was not just the strange calm in her heart or the quiet cower in her eyes. It was something deeper, something she could not explain. She lay down in her room, but sleep did not come easily. Her body felt heavy, yet full of life at the same time. Days passed and the feeling did not leave. Instead, it grew stronger. One morning, while walking slowly across the compound of Agu, she suddenly stopped. A sharp feeling moved through her body, not pain, but something new. She placed her hand gently on her stomach and stood still. Her breathing slowed. "What is this?" she whispered. She closed her eyes, and for a moment she felt a soft warmth inside her. Not fear, not pain, something alive. That same day, she went quietly to see Ifeoma, the only person who had shown her kindness before everything changed. Ifeoma looked at her closely as she entered. "My daughter, you look different." Akunne sat down slowly. "I feel different," she replied. "Something is not the same inside me." Ifeoma moved closer and placed her hand gently on Akunne's stomach. She closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them slowly. "There is life here," she said quietly. Akunne's eyes widened. "Life?" she repeated. Ifeoma nodded. "Yes, you are carrying a child." For a moment, Akunne did not speak. Her mind became still. a child. After everything she had passed through, after the pain, the beating, the night of blood, there was life inside her. Tears filled her eyes. A child, she whispered again. But her joy was not complete. Something about it felt strange. This was not ordinary. Ifeoma, she said slowly, this does not feel normal. Ifeoma looked at her carefully. Then we must go to someone who understands these things, she said. That was how they went to see Dibia Madu, the old native doctor who lived at the edge of Amako. People feared him, but they also respected him. He knew things others did not know. When they arrived, Dibia Madu was sitting quietly outside his hut. His eyes were old but sharp. He looked at Akunne the moment she stepped forward. Before she even spoke, he said, "So, the river has touched you." Akunne felt a chill move through her body. "You know?" she asked softly. Dibia Madu nodded slowly. "I have been waiting." Ifeoma stepped forward. "She says she is carrying a child." Dibia Madu stood up slowly and walked closer to Akunne. He circled her once, then stopped in front of her. His eyes became deeper. "This child is not like other children," he said. Akunne's heart began to beat faster. "What do you mean?" she asked. Dibia Madu raised his hand slightly. "The night you called, the river answered," he said. "You did not return alone." Akunne's breath caught. "You are carrying a child that is tied to Ne Mary." Silence fell. Even the wind seemed to stop. Ifeoma stepped back slowly. Akunne shook her head slightly. "I do not understand," she said. Dibia Madu spoke calmly. "Ne Mary is not just water. She is an ancient spirit, a force. She chose you. She gave you life again, but that life came with a purpose." Akunne held her stomach gently. "And this child?" she asked. "This child carries both worlds, human and spirit." Akunne's eyes filled with fear. "What does that mean for me?" she asked. Dibia Madu looked at her deeply. "It means you are standing between two paths." Akunne's heart became heavy. "What paths?" she asked quietly. Dibia Madu's voice became slow and clear. "You can remain human, live your life, raise your child, walk the earth like every other woman." He paused. "Or," the air grew colder, "you can accept what the river has given you, become one with it, complete the work you have started. But if you do, you will not remain fully human again." Those words entered her heart like a heavy stone. Ifeoma looked at her with concern. "My daughter," she whispered. Akunne stood still. Her mind was full. Her heart was torn. "Why me?" she asked. Dibia Madu spoke calmly. "Because you cried when no one heard you. Because you suffered when no one stood for you. Because your pain called something ancient." Akunne closed her eyes. She remembered everything. The beating, the hunger, the loneliness, the night at the river, the voice, the return. Now this. She opened her eyes again. "What will happen to my child?" she asked. Dibia Madu looked at her stomach. "If you remain human, the child will grow as a powerful child, different but still human. And if you choose the other path," she asked. Dibia Madu's face became serious. "The child will belong more to the spirit world. Its power will be greater, but its life will not be like others." Akunne stepped back slowly. Her heart was heavy. She turned and walked a few steps away. Ifeoma watched her with tears in her eyes. Akunne looked at the sky. The sun was setting. The light was fading. Her life had brought her here, to this moment, to this choice. She placed her hand on her stomach again. A soft warmth answered her touch. Tears rolled down her face. I just wanted peace, she whispered. But peace was not what was given to her. Power was given. Purpose was given. A burden was given. She turned slowly back to Dibia Madu. I need time, she said softly. Dibia Madu nodded. The river will not rush you, but it will keep calling. Akunne nodded slowly. Then she turned and began to walk away with Ifelma. Her steps were slow. Her heart was heavy, because now she understood. She was no longer just a woman. She was something in between pain and power, between earth and spirit, between life and something beyond it. And the choice she would make would change everything. The night was heavy in Amako. The air did not move, and even the trees stood still like they were afraid. In a hidden place near the edge of the village, Nduka, Okoro, and the family of Agu gathered together. Their faces were no longer proud. Fear had broken them, but not enough to make them change. Instead, they chose something darker. A strange man stood before them. His body was covered with charms. His eyes were deep and dangerous. He was not from Amako. He was a dark Dibia, brought from far away. You say this woman cannot be stopped, the man said slowly. Agu spoke with a weak but desperate voice. She is not normal. Since she returned, nothing has been the same. We are losing everything. Izinde added. We want her gone forever. The dark Dibia smiled slightly. Then you must be ready, because what follows her is not small. Ugo, still weak and shaking, whispered, We will do anything. The man nodded. Tonight, he said, we go to the river. Meanwhile, in another part of the village, Akunne stood quietly under the moon. Her hand rested gently on her stomach. She could feel the life inside her. She could feel its quiet strength. But she could also feel something else. The river, calling her again, soft, deep, unstoppable. She closed her eyes. I hear you, she whispered. Suddenly, the wind moved. The air changed. Akunne opened her eyes slowly. They are coming, she said softly. She turned and began to walk towards the river, towards the end, towards her final choice. At the riverbank, the dark ritual had already begun. The strange Dibia stood near the water, chanting quietly. Fire burned in a small pot. Strange objects were placed on the ground. The river moved slowly, but something about it felt restless. Nduka and Okoro stood behind him, afraid but determined. Agu and his family stood together, their hearts beating fast. Akunne! Agu shouted into the night. His voice echoed across the water. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the wind rose suddenly. The fire shook. The river moved faster. And from the darkness, she appeared. Akunne walked slowly towards them. Her face was calm. Her eyes were no longer just human. They carried something deeper, something ancient. The moment they saw her, fear entered their hearts again. The Dibia stepped forward. So, you are the one. Akunne looked at him quietly. You should not be here, she said. Her voice was soft but strong. The Dibia raised his hand and began to chant louder. He threw something into the fire. The flames rose high. Your time is over. But before anything could happen, the river answered. The water rose suddenly. The ground shook. A loud sound came from the river like a deep cry. Everyone stepped back in fear. The fire went out. The wind grew stronger. The water began to rise higher and higher. Then she appeared. Not Akunne, but something greater. The presence of Nemiri filled the place. The water moved like it was alive. The air became cold. The sky darkened. The Dibia's voice shook. This is beyond me, he whispered. Akunne stood still. She did not run. She did not hide. She simply watched. The river roared louder. And then judgment began. Nduka screamed as the ground beneath him opened slightly. He fell to his knees. "Forgive me," he cried, but the earth did not listen. A force dragged him backward. He struggled. He shouted, but no one could help him. He disappeared into the darkness. Okoro tried to run, but something held his legs. Invisible hands pulled him. He fell and screamed. "I am sorry," he shouted, but the forest behind him swallowed him. His voice faded into silence. Ezine fell to the ground, crying loudly. My life," she cried, but everything she once had was gone. Ugo screamed as pain filled her body again. Agus stood frozen. He watched everything. His mouth could not speak. His body could not move. The Dibia ran away in fear. He did not look back. Akunne stepped forward slowly. The river calmed slightly. The wind softened. She looked at Agu. Tears filled his eyes. "Forgive me," he whispered, but Akunne shook her head slowly. "You are not sorry for what you did," she said. Her voice was calm. "You are sorry because you are suffering." Agu fell to his knees. His tears fell freely, but Akunne had no anger left, only truth. She turned slowly toward the river. Her hand rested on her stomach. She took a deep breath. "This is my path," she said softly. The water moved gently, calling her. She stepped forward, one step, then another. The water touched her feet, then her legs, then her body. She did not look back, she did not stop, and slowly she disappeared into the river. Silence fell, deep silence. The night became calm again. The wind stopped, the water returned to normal, but Akunne was gone. Days later, the village slowly returned to life, but nothing was the same. Agu lived, but he was no longer the man he used to be. Every night he heard echoes of the past. Every day he remembered. Ezine became quiet and broken. Ugo wandered without peace, but one morning something happened. Near the river, a baby was found, wrapped in white cloth, crying softly. Beside the child was Ifeoma. She picked up the baby gently, her eyes filled with tears. The child's skin glowed softly, and on her wrist was a small bead. Ifeoma whispered softly, "You are not alone." She carried the child home. Years passed. The child grew, beautiful, calm, but different. And in Amako, strange things began to happen again. Whenever someone did evil, something unseen answered. Justice came in quiet ways, and people began to whisper, "Akunne is still watching." Lesson: never use power to oppress the weak. Never take what does not belong to you. Never think someone has no one, because the earth sees, the spirits hear, and one day justice will come, no matter how long it takes. Thanks for watching this amazing story on African Stories by V. If you liked it and felt inspired, please show your support by clicking the like button, sharing with your friends, and leaving a comment below. To see more interesting stories and learn about different cultures, subscribe to African Stories by V, and don't forget to ring the notification bell so you never miss a new story. Your support means a lot and helps us bring more stories to you. Until we meet again, stay connected, stay inspired, and keep smiling.